This week, I had the opportunity to meet in person with Ranking Member of the Senate Agriculture Committee, John Boozman of Arkansas, along with Ranking Member of the Agriculture Appropriations Committee, Senator John Hoeven of North Dakota. It was at a Farm Bill roundtable held in Fargo and hosted by Senator Cramer of North Dakota. I got to talk with all three of them afterwards. Also joining us was the Agriculture Commissioner of the state, Doug Goehring, and fellow farm broadcaster, my husband, Rusty Halvorson, of KFGO in Fargo, North Dakota. We're going to talk about specialty crops in the Farm Bill, the timeline for the Farm Bill progress, and about conservation programs and whether they should be mandatory or not. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. Let's get into this week's AgNet Weekly, starting with comments from Senator Cramer.
Well, you all covered the event, so you know what people are saying and what they're asking about. We mentioned that the current Farm Bill expires September 30th. Probably not going to get something done by then. But the teams keep working, the negotiators keep working, and boy, it seems to me there's a strong will to get it done this year. And just with that little bit of a tee up, since you've already spent plenty of time with us, maybe we just could open it up for your questions if there's anything you want clarification on.
Let me just say about the what's going on with the Farm Bill. Myself, Senator Stabenow get along very, very well. Again, Farm Bills aren't about Republicans and Democrats. It's regions of the country. It's commodities and putting all of that together. What we're facing is that we'll go back after August, and then the appropriations process is not done, and we'll only have a few weeks. I think we come in after Labor Day. The House comes in a week later, so you're really talking about just a couple weeks to get all of this together. So we're not going to meet our deadline. On the other hand, we are committed to getting this done this year. You get into next year, and then you get into election politics and all of those kind of things. It makes it more difficult. So the good news is we're working very hard. Our staffs get along well together and trying to get these things sorted out as we get, one of the most important bills that we're going to be dealing with this Congress, get that done in a timely way so that our farmers, our producers, everybody related to the industry can have the ability to have a 5-year program that they can be proud of, and then again have the risk management tools that they need to be able to go to the bank and borrow the money they need to go forward.
Yeah, let me just say I want to thank Senator Cramer for inviting our good friend John Boozman up here. He's the ranking on the Ag Committee. I'm ranking on Ag Approps. He just mentioned the Approps bills. We hope we've moved our Ag Approps bill through the full committee in the Senate, and I'm hoping in September we're to the floor. And I think a lot of those concepts you heard today, we'll kind of test case them in the Approps bill. But you really heard the important things from the people that know today. And I think that's why it's so great that Senator Boozman comes out. And Senator Cramer works very hard on ag and ranch issues. He understands them so well. I appreciate all his work. And another guy is the finest ag commissioner in the United States. Now, Bozer might argue Arkansas. But
Wes is my great friend.
Yeah, but it's great to have Doug here. Doug, if you had a thought.
Yeah, thank you. This is great when we can get our two senators, bring Senator Boozman here. This really gives us an opportunity to really illustrate and give a good idea, a cross-section of what's going on in U.S. agriculture. Because when you think about it, we got the pulse crops, we have the specialty crops, we have the high-value crops, we have the other major crops, corn, soybeans, wheat production up here. We have a great cross-section of the land when you think about geographically and the topography we have here. So we bring a lot to the table. It's when you start talking about risk protection pool, crop insurance, and those risk management tools, and you start talking about how those commodity prices are affected and our stability that we have with Commodity 1 or the Title 1 with the commodity title. Understandably, those things are so vitally important to U.S. agriculture, but they're important to North Dakota agriculture and Minnesota and the upper Midwest. So we're so thankful and happy that he came, and thanks to Senator Cramer and Senator Hoeven, because the access we have with them, their position within the Ag Committee greatly supports our efforts in U.S. agriculture also.
You know, one of the things that I'm always struck by when we have an event in North Dakota like this, where we have all the groups, and Doug in particular, because he's such a great representation of it, and that is, Doug, when you mentioned early on how many commodities we have, and I think back to growing up close to here in Kindred, where everybody grew wheat about 3 out of 4 years, you know, and more. The valley here is a little more diverse than other parts of the state, but we were sort of a one crop and a few others sort of a economy for a long time, and now we have, what did you say, 52? 54 different commodities. Think of that diversity, and then to your point, geology, topography, hydrology, we've got it all. We're kind of a rectangular agricultural petri dish, really, in many respects, and so it's complicated. But what's so fun about that, Senator Boozman, is when you come here, you get to hear from a cross section of a lot of different entities, and I really appreciate. I want to add that I really appreciate your attention to the end user, the hungry person that we feed. We oftentimes, I think, when we're talking about policy, when we talk about the economy here in the valley or the economy across the state, and obviously agriculture is number one. Can't imagine it won't always be, but it's also one of the most noble things you can do to make a living, is feed hungry people. And I just think it's really important to keep that in mind and keep that focus. And so I appreciated Melissa Sobolik being here from Great Plains, your attention to hunger, because at the end of the day, what's the point of making something if somebody can't use it? And like I said, feeding hungry people is pretty noble calling.
Well, we're so blessed in this country. It's like turning the lights on. They come on, we turn the water on and things, and then also we go in the grocery store and have full shelves, and prices have gone up significantly, but we're still blessed compared to the rest of the world. We have the cheapest, safest food supply of anywhere. So food security is national security, and that's another reason why it's so important to get this farm bill done, so that our farmers can have the ability to have a 5-year contract with the government, knowing what they can expect, and then our lenders being able to provide them the resources that they need as they go forward.
G.T. Thompson last week at a couple of different Farm Bill listening sessions had said he'd like to have a draft ready August. He'd like to get it to leadership on the floor by mid-September. Have you and Senator Stabenow worked on any kind of calendar similar to that?
No, we really haven't. Our commitment is to get this thing written and in the form that we can go to the floor with, get it out of committee, go to the floor with as soon as possible. But we're really not committed to this month or that month. I don't think it's possible to get done by the end of the country's calendar year, which is the end of the end of September. And so, but I do feel very strongly, I think Senator Stabenow feels strongly, that we'd like to get this thing done by the first of the year. And it's interesting, we don't have to do a lot of things with it running out October 1st. It's not like we have to do a lot of things to continue on. USDA is telling us they've got the money to continue on till the 1st of January. So we're going to continue. We're going to get this thing right. If you'd asked me in 2018 about the Farm Bill this time of the year, I'd say, things are moving in the right direction. This year, it's hard to imagine the difference in 2018 and now as far as the instability now. We're in a very different world, very different circumstances because of inflation, because of supply chains, and all the things that are going on. We want to make sure that we get this thing right. We give the farmers, the producers, the tools that they need. If we can't do that, why would we? Much of the data that we're using now is 2018 Farm Bill, which goes back to 2012 data. Why would we put our farmers in a position with over 10-year-old data for another 5 years in one of the most fluctuating times in recent history?
I might just add to that Senator Boozman and I both have served in the House, so we understand how the House works politically, but we also understand how slowly the Senate works intentionally. getting it right is our job. Getting it done fast is the House's job. So I think the way Senator Boozman explains it is right on. But the Farm Bill is one of those, what we call oftentimes in Washington, and your colleagues especially, refer to as must-pass legislation. Now, we know that's not literally true because my first Farm Bill didn't pass, and we had to bring it back up a couple months later, which worked out fine. But it is one of those bills that is widely understood that we have to have. So I do think that while September 30th, we're not going to have a bill done, the end of the year is realistic. And there is a political will to do that. I sense that from all sides, on both sides of the aisle and both sides of the Capitol. The other thing, when you talk about 2012 data and the 2018 Farm Bill, and the three of us were all on that conference committee, one of the other things that's changed a lot besides the price of all inputs, including labor, is the shortage of labor. And so we have other, topics, other issues apart from the Farm Bill, particularly as it relates to immigration reform and some flexibility in our visa programs, that unless we get the southern border issue fixed, we're going to be hard-pressed to fix the legal immigration side of things. And that's another challenge probably for another day, but the crisis is upon us. And I think our producers certainly know that, right, Doug?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we need that. But thank you guys for acknowledging it. H2A issues are tremendous. I hear from my colleagues across the United States, we experience it deeply here in North Dakota. We have about 2,600 H2A workers. But I get the tension and the controversy behind it. You got a southern border issue that is interfering with our ability to even maintain a workforce in this country. So we got to get some of those things resolved, and I appreciate the commitment from all of you. Thank you.
I wanted to ask about, you mentioned specialty crops. So I report in California, Arizona, Florida, Alabama, Georgia. Specialty crops, you brought that up specifically. Specialty crops in the Farm Bill don't get a lot of attention, but what does it mean for a state like yours where you have all the other commodities as well, whereas in California, you're not going to find a lot of soybeans. But what does it mean in a state like yours to have specialty crops represented?
Well, first of all, there's probably about 14 crops out of those 54 that if it wasn't for specialty crop block grants, we couldn't have research. We couldn't have some ability to tweak marketing and to to create better access to the consumers, our domestic and international. Keep in mind, specialty crop came from Congress. It didn't come from USDA. And in fact, within the federal government, they kind of fought it and pushed back on it right away. But Congress pretty much stood their ground and said, no, we need to do this. And we use it now to help the pulse crops, dry bean production, peas, lentils, potatoes, sunflowers. If you didn't have that money, you couldn't do the research. You couldn't do what we need to do to support their efforts to produce in a marketplace where they pretty much are overshadowed.
I think specialty crops are going to do just fine in the Farm Bill, whether it's the research side or anything else. This is a good one for Senator Boozman. I don't want to put him on the spot, but he is a buddy, so it's good to have a little fun. Senator Stabenow is going to make sure those specialty crops are well taken care of, okay? Frankly, I'm more concerned about some of the other things we talked about today, updating crop insurance and the counter-cyclical safety net, and making sure that our farmers and ranchers aren't burdened by tying conservation programs, to the support and having a strong Title I.
Yeah, I think the specialty crops are going to grow with all of the emphasis on food as medicine, and then too the fact that when you look at the problems that California has with land values, that's a problem throughout the country, but California, Florida in particular, and then too just climate, what has happened there. So as a result, I think we're going to see opportunities for the rest of the country to participate more. One of the things that we can do that's not going to cost anybody any money, that's just an efficiency thing, is we actually have produced a lot of programs that help small specialty crop producers. They don't use them because they're so complicated. People that are into the commodity programs, the row crops, they understand how to work the system. For generations, they've been doing this. these smaller producers that we desperately want, that we're trying to encourage, they simply can't participate because it takes, a team of accountants to figure it out. The other problem that we have with USDA is that it's much easier to get a bigger grant when you're looking at conservation programs. They come in, they just need a little bit of money, which is a big deal to them, but it's almost like it's not worth the hassle of USDA to fool with. So we hear this all the time from small producers and things, and that's the value of getting out, going throughout the country, having the hearings that we've had. We've done a really good job of that. I've talked to our new Assistant Secretary, Tori Small. She's very interested in this. It shouldn't be that if you're in rural America and you're trying to get a grant, you're a mayor, and there's so much in the Farm Bill that's not just crops, it's about rural America. It shouldn't be that you have to hire a grant writer to be able to fill the form out. So those are things that we're going to be working on. Those don't cost money. That's efficiency, and it's something that we simply are going to do.
One thing I might add to the issue of trade came up, and again, this is, well, there's obviously some support on the bill, but there's the bigger issue of who's doing the trade, who's implementing, what's our Commerce Department doing, what's our trade representative doing in terms of reaching out to initiate some bilateral or multilateral trade deals, and we're not seeing a lot of that, and yet this is the area that where agriculture shines. And in the infrastructure bill, we were just adding it up here recently. I participated in the event announcing $122 million from the Greg Tavine here from Grand Farm, and the ability to just innovate, to do more precise precision agriculture, to make sure that there's nomadic broadband that can get out to the tractor, allows them to be all the more productive. But then you look at, I think in North Dakota, we've already taken in the first couple of years of the implementation of the infrastructure bill, surface transportation has taken in about $750 million here into North Dakota. $750 million in the first couple of years. On the water side, which we also oversee in EPW, we've more than doubled the money that's gone to the state revolving fund to help rural water. So I think we're hitting all the right things in terms of producing the crops and moving them to more markets. We're now, John and Senator Boozman and I on EPW, taking up the next Water Resources Development Act, WRDA bill, and North Dakota's done very well by WRDA the last few years, and we'll be looking to make sure those ports and waterways and transportation water systems are ready to move more product out of the country to hungry people around the world. All right, anything else, you guys?
But I had another one about conservation and keeping conservation programs voluntary. That's something that's important to my listeners as well. It seemed to be important. It seemed to be important to all of you.
That's one of my. We talk about what needs to be included or excluded in the Farm Bill, and that is a red line for me. We simply are not going to get ourselves in a situation where we have a Farm Bill that makes it such that you have to be climate friendly enough to participate in the risk management tools, conservation friendly enough. So these need to be voluntary, and that's, again, is so very important. So I want to assure your listeners that if I have anything to do with it, I simply can't support a Farm Bill that goes down that path. We've seen what happens when you do that in the Netherlands and Germany. And the places where it really wreaks the most havoc are with the small producers. The big boys are going to be able to, they'll come up with the regulatory atmosphere that they need to, they'll hire the people they need to keep track of all this. It's the small producers, which we desperately are trying to help, again, to make viable rural America. They're the ones that will really struggle and simply not be able to do it because of the regulatory atmosphere that they'll have going forward with something like that. And then Washington is notorious for a one-size-fits-all. So the one thing I've learned traveling throughout the country, the way that we have, is that it's very, very different in North Dakota. In fact, it's very, very different in some parts of North Dakota compared to other parts. Some farms compared to another part of the farm. So you have to be able to have the ability to, to react to those kind of things, and some sort of mandatory program that is ties your climate friendliness to the safety nets or conservation. We simply aren't going to do.
Thank you once again to all of the senators, Senator John Hoeven of North Dakota, Senator John Boozman of Arkansas, and Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. Also to North Dakota Agriculture Commissioner Doug Goehring and fellow farm broadcaster Rusty Halvorson for that conversation. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. That's this week's AgNet Weekly.